and just thank you for joining us. You are here tonight as a part of the Voya STEM Fellows. That's who we are, and we are going to talk a little bit tonight about what it looks like to bring real-world STEM research and problem solving into your classroom. We're going to try to have dialogue as much as we can about how to make this practical, especially in the current times. So, you know, we're not going to ignore what's going on. We're going to try to talk about what does this look like currently. So if you are just joining us, or if you haven't done so already, make sure that you drop your email in the chat box, and we will be sending you a certificate for attending the Ph.D. at the end of the evening.
And last second reminder for anyone else coming in, we're getting a little interactive with you here with Pear Deck. So if you just are joining us, the website we're going to ask you to jump on is joinpd.com. And once you get there, the code you can see is kind of in our top right corner here. It's also in the chat, and that's going to allow you to interact with some of our activities tonight.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you for the introduction, Rachel. We're really excited to be here with you all and excited to share some resources that may be helpful for us, especially in, like Rachel said, our current situation that most of us are living in. So I can start by introducing myself briefly. I am Cori Wotjuski. I teach 5th grade. This is my 7th year teaching. First year teaching 5th grade. Prior to that, I spent 6 years teaching 6th grade math and science. And I'm bringing this to you live from Wisconsin.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Jerry Kroll, and I'm a 6th year teacher. I teach in CTE areas in high school. So I've taught a little bit of everything, but mainly my focus now is automotive courses. And I'm coming at you from the suburbs of Chicago.
Right on. Thanks, Jerry. And everybody, I'm Rachelle Pedersen. The last 5 years I've taught high school technology education in Connecticut, and I am now a full-time PhD student at Texas A&M University down in College Station. So we are so excited to have everybody here tonight, and we just thank you so much for your time. I saw a couple new people that jumped on, so I put some information in the chat box. If you're just joining us, make sure you drop in your email into the chat box, and then also jump on joinpd.com and put the code that's in the top right, HBXFJ. So, all right, Cori, what do we got? All right, so the goal for tonight, like we had mentioned, we're really talking about real world problems and research, and how do we get that into our classroom. So tonight you're going to be hearing a little bit about the rationales behind real world problems and why is it important to actually have your students look at real world problems as opposed to just running through some curriculum. And we're going to give you practical ways to bring this into your classroom, as well as some dialogue around the importance of it.
Some of the norms that we've put into place and some community agreements. If it's possible and safe, we would love to see your faces. If you could keep your cameras on, that would be great. Another thing is just every question is welcome. We really want to hear what something that is challenging you, or if you'd like some support, or if you have some great advice, feel free to drop it in the chat if it's easier, if it's not a great time to pause, or jump in the mic. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. We run into some troubles when a lot of mics are unmuted. Don't let us do all of the work. So we've been spending a lot of time together, the three of us, and we'd love to hear your perspective. We'll be jumping into some breakout sessions here shortly, and really just use that time to take advantage of some intimate conversations about real world problem solving. And the last one, if you think of an awesome resource, just put it in the chat.
Excellent. Yeah, and we'll try to share out some valuable resources that we pick up tonight and share those back out to you guys afterwards. I think this is our first little interactive Pear Deck slide here.
Yes. Yeah, so on your screen you should see this map, and there should be a red dot, and you can drag your little red dot to wherever you are joining us from on this map. And then Cori's going to show us where our friends are coming from today. So as you're doing that, if for some reason any of this is not working for you, just throw your answers into the chat box or feel free to jump out. So
yeah, and there are, if you are just joining us again, looks like there's a few more participants that haven't logged into the Pear Deck. So if you are still looking to do that, you can go to joinpd.com and enter the code HVXFJ.
Hey, Cori, can you go ahead and show their live responses?
here we go, right on.
This is the fun part too, teacher friends. You can actually move this, and it's interactive right now. So if someone wants to give it a shot, maybe relocate yourself, just show us where you're moving.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is, as you can see, some of these things move around. Students are adding responses. Yes, if you decide as a teacher, I am done having my students make decisions, you can click the lock button and lock in their answers. They have a lot of fun with this, especially if it's the first time they've used Pear Deck. I know when I started using it in my classroom, they had a ball, and then it was like, we're gonna learn how to use it, lock. So you definitely, it's a very interactive site. So right on, we got everybody from coast to coast. That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
All right.
Very cool.
If you want to jump us to the next question.
Yeah, so
we want to know a little bit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, we really want to know, now that we know where you're joining us from, but what content areas are you teaching? Are you a learner right now? So what do you teach and what grade?
And you can actually submit more than one answer here, so feel free to keep adding to it. Cori's going to scroll through. We got some 8th grade folks, some high school, 9th through 12. Awesome. 5th grade and current PhD students. We have an instructional technology coordinator, 7th and 8th grade.
Oh,
Architecture, oh, that's awesome.
Very cool. Yeah.
Right on. 3rd grade, yeah. I'm guessing a lot of parents are feeling your spirit right now as that 3rd grade teacher. Yes, so right on. And
Very
in
cool.
the chat, Bob says he mentors K through 12. Awesome.
Thank you for sharing.
I think this is kind of important for us to maybe lead into this question, because this might look a little bit different depending on your students and what level you're at and where you are. But this is kind of our first discussion point here. We're going to ask you guys to drop some comments for us in the chat, and then we'll share out in a moment here. Why do you guys think it's valuable to incorporate real-world STEM problem solving and research in your classroom? We're going to give you guys.
Feel free to jump in the chat or with your mic. Either option is fine.
Thanks, Bob. Saw you were just jumping in from Alaska. That's awesome. Right on. Let's see. Michelle, can you give us a little bit? I know you led our Twitter chat this last Monday, and we had some similar questions around this idea of why is it valuable. Can you give us some ideas that came out of that Twitter chat?
Let me just unmute really quick. I think a lot came out really that it was inspiring. It allowed them to connect with scholars. It allowed them to feel really valuable and that their voice was heard. That came out in the Twitter. Also that it was a connection to community and they felt that they were making a difference. I think that this, excuse me, transcends that whole piece between learning and also the social emotional piece for connection. And so really bringing those problems in allowed people to engage. And when I say people, it came out in Twitter that it wasn't just about the kids engaging, it was about the community engaging too. So if that helps a little bit, that's kind of what we felt on the Twitter chat.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot going on in the chat too. So let's see. We have, Greg says, creates more interest. Obviously, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Keeps kids staying engaged. Why are we learning this? Yeah, Michelle, I think that's similar, echoes a lot of what you were saying, that why behind it.
Yep.
I'm seeing a lot too of the, it lets them be a little more invested. You never have to answer that "why are we learning this" question. I think it's something that they're more excited to go home and share with their families about too.
Yeah. And Haley, elephant in the room. Yeah, kids have been totally obsessed with everything that's happening right now. And I mean, hey, this is a perfect time to say, introduce them a little bit more into science and tell them why science is important and that they can become scientists. And so I really love that you brought that out. Absolutely. Right on. All right. Cori, you want to lead us into the next? Awesome.
So before we continue to our next, we wanted to share a resource with you. There are 3 ways you can access it. You can click on the link below. You could scan the QR code, but these are some really great articles that we found, some research that supports why STEM, the real world problems are so crucial. And a lot of it talks about using the real world problems and the STEM skills in more than just the science or technology classes. So in addition to any resources you put in the chat, we would encourage you to check out some of these resources as well.
Yeah, and I think this is valuable for some of you out there who are worried about, hey, I have a certain number of CLSs and a certain number of things, X, Y, Z, I have to hit in this unit before I go to next unit. And, oh no, now we're getting to the end of the year and there's not enough time left. But we've got some valuable stuff here that you could maybe use as justification if someone's asking you why you want to maybe integrate a real world problem solving project. This might help to alleviate some strain with that and help you to tie it in with your current existing learning.
Is there anyone that needs another moment to access this code?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I'll also put that code in the chat too, in case anyone misses this slide, if we want to keep moving forward.
All right. Thank you, Jerry.
All right. So we have a short little video that we're hoping kind of gets some ideas out there about, again, why is this important? It's kind of a funny clip if some of you have seen this before. Hopefully you recognize it. If not, this was Cori and I's first time seeing this video and it was hilarious. So we're hoping that you enjoy and kind of spark some ideas out of this.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. I don't believe this.
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
All right. I love that. I love watching the reactions in the chat. Yes, Mitch Hedberg, so funny. So the whole point of showing you this video is it should kind of spark some ideas about what does this have to do with real world STEM problems. So after first reaction and watching this video, go ahead and jump on in here. What do you think this has to do with what we're talking about tonight? Yeah, Haley, I'm gonna call you there. Absolutely, you say you've seen so many kids act like this. Can you expand a little bit more on that? What are you noticing in your classroom?
Yeah, I mean, just as soon as kids run into any problems, it's like immediate roadblock, game over, forget it, I can't do it. It's like, no, you Like, it's just like, take the next step, just literally keep going, just don't give up so quickly. So I see this a lot, and they're not great problem solvers. It's definitely something we have to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that Catherine just said in the chat box too. Catherine, I know you work a lot with students in summer camps in STEM, and you do a ton with problem solving. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you had to say?
I was just saying, that we just want to make sure that we're teaching students to become problem solvers and kind of, use their brain. In this instance, that it really shouldn't have to think outside of the box, but, in other instances when we give them projects and stuff, we want them to kind of think outside of the box, come up with something innovative and something different.
Debbie, I really like what you said, is that we need to get kids to use their brain instead of giving them everything that they need. And I think this is where it's really hard, in that fine line of productive struggle. We obviously want to be there and support our students. We're educators. That's what we do. But at what point is it not productive for them? It's not helpful. And, I see that with my own kindergartner, with every age student I've ever worked with.
Yeah, we have a lot go. Yes, absolutely. So many people are agreeing with what's going on. And Bob, I love what you said. Students have been spoon-fed all of their mathematical experiences without having to problem solve or apply at a deeper level. And so, Catherine, that's similar to what you were saying earlier, where sometimes they can problem solve, but they need to be able to do it in a different context. And I think that's definitely part of where we're getting at tonight. So thank you, everybody. Awesome.
Hey, before we move along, can I put a little spin on this, maybe give everybody a few seconds to add?
Yeah.
We kind of addressed this with you guys thinking about your students. Does anybody see how this video could be applied to a teacher trying to integrate this problem-solving situation? If anybody wants to jump in or just post some comments for us.
Feel free to unmute if it's easier to talk through the microphone instead of the chat.
Well, I don't know about everybody else, but we are now on complete online education for at least the next several weeks. So lots of problem solving going on as teachers right now across the country.
Yeah, absolutely, Debbie. I totally agree. And I think that if we don't learn to step up on the escalator and turn it into some stairs, it's not going to go anywhere for the students.
Something that I'm wondering, and in the current situation of teaching online, is that most of my students don't have devices. So how can you provide these authentic real-world problems in a world where maybe a third of my class has it, and it becomes the issue of equity, not just online learning, but in the classroom? Are we making sure that all of our students have access to these materials, and not just our advanced learners, or just those kids that are kind of stuck in a rut and don't want to move forward? So that's the problem I'm dealing with now, is how do I access all students?
This is Bob Williams. I think one of the things when I think about the escalator and how it could apply to teachers is, I think sometimes we can get caught up in working in isolation, or sometimes we can get caught up in, and we already have lesson plans from last year, and so it's pretty easy to do them exactly. But do we sometimes have a lesson that we realize we can improve upon, and then we get to it the next year and maybe we don't, or we can find up with something better? So I think there's this continual process of looking at what we're doing and seeing how to improve it and making it more meaningful. And then even if we have something that's really rock star status, we need to share it out and help others kind of see how it works. But there just needs, I think, a lot more collaboration and a lot more sharing. And when we don't do that, I think it can lead to these situations where you're kind of stuck on an escalator and you're missing opportunities to advance in your own practice and help other educators advance in their practice.
Well, and Bob, this is Michelle. I agree with you, but I think another thing too that we need to consider is, in this practice, as we navigate all this new world that we're in, particularly right now. I know in the chat box there's a lot about online learning, and we're all in different places with that. I think student feedback too is really important. Sometimes we're hesitant to have students give us that direct feedback to say, hey, this would be better. We talk about them giving feedback in the classroom, but sometimes I think it's hard for us as a teacher to hear that that lesson really stunk. You know, we need to fix it. How do we do this? And so building that together to be student-centered around research and problem solving really works when we're all on the same page. And I think we can get there with our students and, you know, level the playing field to be right there with them. And what you're saying is absolutely correct. I think we need to bring students into the conversation more.
This is Kristen. When Bob, you were speaking, I started to geek out with physics with the people going up the escalator and thinking to myself, because I had taught this a couple weeks ago, what's doing the work? Well, the escalator's doing the work. The escalator stops and the people on the escalator don't want to do the work to keep going up. And I think sometimes educators choose to not do the work to improve their craft or to fix something that didn't go well, or even take something that was phenomenal and do the work to push it out, to scale it up, to do things. So I think it's just a reminder that we have a responsibility also to ourselves and to our profession to do the work.
Well, and I think to expect excellence out of ourselves too in that, right? To say, I'm going to move that up. I can be excellent. I'm going to work towards that. And I'm going to help others do that as well. Even if that means I'm going to step to the back so that they can lead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's really crucial about these real world problems is the fact that what you all are saying is so true. You can't reuse your material from 2 years ago because it's supposed to be real world and now. So if I love what I think, Michelle, you had said about having student voices. Find out what they're interested in. Somebody said that earlier in the chat box. What are they most curious about? And it's probably something that's happening currently, which means you might have to be on your toes with your material and be flexible, just like Bob had mentioned. So awesome. Does anybody have one last thought before we jump into the next thing?
I think we kind of had a chance to talk about this. So I think, are we good to move on?
Yep.
Okay. So in just a moment, we will be putting you guys into break rooms. I want to just outline this article that we're going to ask you guys just to briefly look at. It's very short. And I want you to think about what the constraints of the article might be, what stands out to you. So I'll just summarize it quickly. This is from Education Week, the search for real world STEM problems. What I love about this article is that it's very easy to it's super easy to kind of understand the criteria for what a real world problem is. And I think that's where the issue might lie, is that teachers don't always either have the confidence or they're wondering, is this real enough? And so it really breaks it down. It has to be real. Students have to be able to relate. And I think that's one of the most important ones, because if the students have buy-in, you're golden. The problem should be doable. And I also love this one, that there's multiple acceptable approaches for this and solutions so that all students can access it in a way that makes sense to them. It should use the design process, and then it gives some different possibilities of problems, and then some resources for teachers to find problems if they're kind of stuck and not sure what to do. Right, let's go back here. So you can access the link, and then we will be putting you guys into groups of about 4 people, and then you guys can talk about the article, share some resources, and again, try to answer, what constraints are there when trying to implement this and what stands out to you.
And Cori, I'll take over so that you can work on those breakout groups.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to, at this time, I know we have you on the Pear Deck, so you should be able to access the link either by clicking on the link in the middle of the slide or at the bottom of the page. That way you have the article up and you can reference it. But in your small breakout groups, We're going to ask you to briefly scroll through. You're going to have about 5 to 8 minutes to do this, and we'll ask you what stands out, what are the things that jump out to you, what might be difficult about this, and then if you have any additional resources as we're going through this. That's the beauty. Yes, we can. Thank you, Bob. We can definitely add the link to the chat box. If you have any additional resources for implementing real world problems or research into your classroom. I know we touch a lot on the real world problem side. So definitely for those of you that have experience with research as well, I know that's an area that isn't talked about as much. So whatever resources you have would be fantastic, and we can talk about those. So in about 5 to 8 minutes, we'll probably cut it closer to 5 minutes. We'll come back together and we will dialogue. So have one person in your group, 1 or 2 people become the spokesperson so they can share out with the group, and we'll have a little discussion about that. And thank you, Kristen, for putting the link in the chat box as well. So, all right, Cori, how are we doing?
I have 4 rooms with 4 participants in each room, and if all goes well, when I hit this button, it should virtually send you all to a separate space. So we will see you guys back shortly.
Perfect.
Yay, welcome back, friends. Okay, right on. So we want to dialogue a little. Tell us, I mean, we weren't in your small group, so tell us what you talked about. You should have one person that can jump in, and we'd love to hear what you had to say. So feel free to unmute and jump in.
So I'll jump in since Kristen, I got a footprint on my back from Kristen. She nominated me and then checked out really quickly. No, I love the wheel, and and that's what we really talked about. Is the beautiful part about this is that you can, from one problem, you can really tie in all the core subjects. You can tie math into it, you can tie science and you can tie English into it. And the beautiful part is that you might utilize them to varying degrees, but ultimately you're using all subject areas. And then number 2 is these real world problems is that, here's the issue, here's the problem we have. We talked about our, like a greenhouse. How much dirt do we need to grow X amount of tomatoes to sell at the end of the year? And so it's that whole problem piece, and then having the kids do the mathematical piece of it, the science piece of it, and working through it. And then the end of the year, do we have enough tomatoes? Did we actually do we grow our plants correctly?
Thank you, Steve. I absolutely agree with the every subject, and I think that's something that some of the educators I've been around, there's this giant misconception that if they don't teach science or they don't teach math, they can't incorporate STEM skills. And so I think this is why it's so important that we use our voices in our own districts to get that message out, that this is not just a science, technology, engineering, math. This is all educators' responsibility to be teaching these skills.
I think that's an issue that's near and dear to Steve and myself both. We talk about this and work on this regularly. There's lots of programs out there that are trying to do this and make this like an everyday thing, right? So we have a few classes in our own district. We have a geometry and construction class it's incorporating math and the hands-on building skills. We have ties with automotive and English classes. So I think it's there, and we just have to be loud about it and be proud of it and show it and share it to others. Thanks for sharing, Steve. Anybody else want to jump in? Another group?
I can jump in and share for group 3. We talked a lot about the student lens and just really gaining their perspective on what it means to be real world. Sometimes our real world is very different than their real world. And then our team also discussed that each year it's different as well. We have a new group of kids each year, and just brainstorming things that are important to them, things that they want to tackle. So really the main focus was looking at real world through their lens, and then just that general theme of inquiry throughout. And group 3, feel free to jump in if I left anything out. So
thanks, Katie. We got 2 more groups. Can we hear from another group?
I guess I'll chime in since Tim didn't take the bait. That's okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thanks, Greg.
Yeah, no thanks to you, Tim. Anyway, so I guess I probably should talk because I did a lot of the talking in our group. So my apologies to my group. I didn't mean to dominate the conversation. What I will say is I've done something very similar with this article is stating for like 4 years, and it's really hard. I guess part of it is self-imposed. I make sure it hasn't been created before. So they're not like, they're actually trying to create something that you can't just Google and copy. With that being said, they are selecting real world problems. And the hard part is not for them necessarily to come up with a real world problem, but it's empathy and actually caring about that problem. So it's difficult for them to really care, I guess, because occasionally it might be, oh, my grandfather has this issue, because we limit it to health, sustainability, and educational tools with the Design to Make a Difference competition we've been in for a few years. But overall, still, we have a third of the groups who love it and they do really well and they get really involved and it's amazing. Like I sat there before, like, wow. And then another 2/3 of groups where it's going from mediocre, like not bad, to, whoa, that was rough. And I feel bad for that bottom third probably because I feel like it leaves a bad taste in their mouth, like the engineering design process, because they never got past the testing phase, like, or some of them couldn't even get to the testing phase. And I think they don't understand that, we're all on the path of learning and bettering ourselves. And it's okay if you have failure, but that's a difficult lesson for a lot of kids to comprehend. For instance, my talking point last week was to have students look at the Dunning-Kruger effect graph. I wish I could show you guys that. Google right now. I'll write it, Dunning-Kruger. Just go in Google Images and look at it. It's fun. There's a couple different plays on it, but how the peak of stupidity is, when you have a high confidence and little competence. And I try to explain to my students, I know adults who are at that peak often, and yours truly, I'm constantly in the valley of despair, the lower part of that, where my competence and confidence are low, but that's fine because I can see that it's going to trend upwards, if I keep working hard. So I think all these, I think that's the important thing with all things STEAM, that they need to understand that they might not know something, but they can figure it out. So I'll shut up. Thank you guys for listening. I'll mute myself now.
Thank you so much, Greg, for bringing up this idea of failing. When you were in your breakout sessions, Rachel, Jerry, and I were talking about that and how do we get our students, we get a new group every year, and how long does it take to get them to understand that failure is okay? Failure is one step closer to solving the problem. And I know, Kristen, you just put a plug in the spring, the session on promoting failure, and I think providing real world problems is going to touch on all of those STEM skills that we keep talking about, and especially the promoting failure. And we need to make sure our students understand that that's such a valuable part of learning as well.
Yeah, agreed. And like Steve mentioned, and Greg mentioned the design process in the article, it's a circle, right? So there's not an end of the line. It doesn't have to be over. And it's kind of tough to maybe sometimes teach a student that, hey, maybe just the time we had says that you didn't get to try redoing your design and we just have to kind of leave it there. But I think that's still valuable. And it's interesting and tough sometimes to add in like that empathy and understanding and promoting failure. That's not anything in our CLSs. It's not something that we can easily throw in the grade book. So I think that's part of the challenge that we're all trying to better ourselves towards.
Well, and I think it really is about the inquiry process too, because that's the inquiry and design cycle, and they overlap each other and are part of the same piece. I think it's really important to remember that you can enter an inquiry process or a design cycle in lots of different places, not just at the beginning. So sometimes you do need to go revisit and reflect and redo, and we need to encourage students to be able to do that in this process.
All right, thank you. And do we have one more group still, I believe? Is there a final breakout group?
Nobody's stepping up. So we talked a lot about making it real for the kids, getting their buy-in and having to keep it fresh and keep things, so not changing things up every year and making it more relevant to the students that you have. I think a lot of teachers get stuck in the like, well, I'm just going to do what I did last year because that's easy mode. But you know, you have a different audience every year, different kids, different situations. Like if I taught biology right now, I'd be definitely talking about this virus, right? So keeping it current, keeping it fresh. And I think part of it is keeping it fresh for you too, because if you're teaching the same thing over and over, it just gets boring. But yeah, making it real to your students, I think that's huge.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's tricky, especially after you try to figure out what the kids are interested in, and then how you're going to make it relevant, and really getting that student buy-in will help you drive your lessons. So yes, don't be using the same examples from 2009. Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, right on. All right, so this is the part that you want to make sure you have your Pear Deck pulled up. I'm super excited about this. So Cori, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so we want you on your device to draw what it might look like in your classroom to incorporate real-world STEM problems or research. There are no bad pictures here, folks. This really? I am so excited for you to do this. So just whatever you can, you're gonna draw it out, and then Cori's gonna be kind of showing some of your beautiful artistic work as you go through, and we'll have some folks share out about what their fabulous works of art are.
Don't worry, Michelle, yours is gonna be fantastic, I believe.
Oh, it's gonna be so good.
Okay, you've never seen my whiteboard. Come on. Oh.
Yeah, academic risk taking, absolutely.
Yeah. What was that failure thing that we're supposed to look at in April? There you go.
All right, so we're gonna give you about 2 minutes to do your drawing. So I'm gonna play some beautiful music as you're doing this. If you are frustrated and need to vent while you're doing it, you can unmute your mic and explain to us what your Picasso looks like, okay? But we're really excited. Cori, if you want to show us some of these as we're going through. Oh, yeah, question marks. I'm going to play some. Oh, here we go.
I see the light bulbs on here.
All right, I'm excited to ask y'all about these as we go through. Lovely vehicle. Ooh, we're coming back to this one. Whoever you are, I want to know what that is. Oh, right on. We got some text. That's good. Oh, thank you, Haley. This is Grace Yoon. If anybody needs a quarantine playlist, go look up Grace Plays Violin. She covers a bunch of pop songs. Here's an engineer. Global thinkers. Algorithms. Ooh, yes. I'm excited to know what that is. Oh, right on. Okay. Nice. Ooh, I'm guessing that might be a out of the box thinking maybe. Right on. We're gonna give you about 20 more seconds to work on your Picasso. Oh, we got some stuff filling in. Beautiful. If you are not able to draw for any reason, feel free to throw some ideas into the chat box and we can talk about those as well. Or even if you're finished drawing, feel free to throw some ideas in. All right. And I'm going to pause our music and let's go ahead and talk about some of these. Would love to, oh yes, okay, fantastic. So let's, Cori, which one do you want to talk about first?
I'm going through, there's a couple that stood out to me and I try to get to them. This one here, I know, Rachel, this one also kind of sparked into your mind.
Yes. Can somebody elaborate on what they drew here?
This is me, and I guess I'll describe it. I went to a Woodrow Wilson modeling course early in my career, and one of the things the culminating activities was this activity that you design this. You kind of had this tube that you had, and you put a marble in it, and that's supposed to be a desk. I'm not an artist, but anyway, that's supposed to be a desk, and you make this contraption, and then you put the marble in it, and it kind of comes off horizontally, and you measure how high it is, and you measure the horizontal distance of where it hits, and you had to come up with what the quadratic equation was. And then there were two tests that went with it. One of them was that you got kind of like a little chemistry stand with a cup in it, and you set the height, and students had to calculate where to set it so that the marble would go in the cup, and then they'd roll it to see if it went, and then the answer was yes or no. And then the other was where you set the height of the cup, and they had to calculate it. So they had to kind of play with it, but there was a real, did you get it or did you not? And I've done it in classes. What was nice is each group, because they had a different marble or they had something different, their equation was different, so they couldn't just copy from someone else. And then I had school-wide math assemblies where we had a big gym, and we had like a Hot Wheel track that we set up above on the track, and or a tennis ball or something. And then we had the same thing. They had to calculate. They knew the height. They had to measure the height. They had to see where it hit, and then they had to figure out where to set a little basketball hoop for it to go through. And so there's 1,200 kids there, and either it goes through or it doesn't. So it had some drama to it, but it was always an activity that was kind of, did you get it? Did you know it? Did you figure it out? And seeing sometimes where they calculated it mathematically, they set it up, and then most of the time it worked, was very gratifying.
Thanks, Bob. That's awesome. I mean, just looking at this, and I see some comments in the chat. There's some physics going on here with laws of physics taking place. There's some engineering and design processes going on here. There's some math calculations. And the beauty of it is that there's different answers for every kid. Thanks for sharing. Cori, got another one you want to start with?
Well, I'm wondering, we have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah, they're a little tight on time.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to share theirs, or we can just kind of move through this and get to the very last slide so you guys can see the next sessions that are coming up.
Yeah, I think it's safe if we move forward. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that little fun exercise.
Yeah, and we actually, on that previous resource that we linked out to you all, we made it available so that as you have resources, you can be dropping those into that file, and it's kind of just a working file. So any ideas or resources that you have, and what I specifically would love to hear in that file as we go through is maybe what have you done that it's real world example, so that others can get some ideas from you. Like I know, who was it, Steve or somebody had mentioned the greenhouse, having students build that, and that project. So if you have any more ideas, that would be really, really helpful. Excellent. So we have a couple of take-home questions for you just before we leave tonight. So we want some short, quick things that you can take away from this. So first of all, think about who is at your school. who does this already really well? Who do you know that's at your school that is just crushing the game when it comes to real world STEM problems? And then also, what is out in your community? Well, there's probably a lot right now, so how can you incorporate that into your classroom? Cori made this third one, and I love it. How can you do this in 10 minutes tomorrow without pulling an all-nighter? So especially with the virtual classroom, and that goes into that fourth one. What could you do in 10 minutes to incorporate real-world STEM problems without having to stay up all night and rework your entire curriculum? So we just wanted to give you a few of those as you go through. And then, Cori, if you want to click on the next slide for us. This is just a calendar of what's coming up next. I know we had a lot of conversation that links to some of these topics, like promoting failure, willing to rock the boat. And so we have really, really great sessions that are coming up. Yes, Greg, please, if everybody could post their Twitter name in the chat as well, we can all follow each other and see the resources that you're having. Make sure that you also use #VoyaSTEM and link that there. And then for those of you that didn't hear at the beginning, if you could attach your email into the chat, we'll make sure that we send you a certificate for attending the PD tonight, which I think is also on our next slide. Cori. Fantastic. We're going to make sure that we leave this up for a little while so that you can go through and make sure you write these Twitter handles as we're going. And we just want to thank you all so much for coming tonight and for being here with us, spending an hour of your time online even more. So hang in there, everybody. We got this. If you have any questions, Cori and Jerry and I are going to be hanging out for a few minutes longer. Or if you wanted to share more of your drawing, feel free to. So thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and have a great rest of your night.
Yes, thank you all so much. I read a couple comments that this seems like the most normal they've had all week, and I have to agree that this has been kind of a consistent thing, and we really appreciate you joining us all and your willingness to participate in some great conversation.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and hopefully we're looking forward to seeing you guys adding to and modifying our resource list. So that's our hope and intention. So we'll try to keep in touch and keep adding resources, and hopefully everyone who is stuck remote right now can maybe find some value that they can integrate into their e-learning plans.